what's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Swamp. The Swamp is an acronym.
Stands for some whack-ass movie podcasting.
My name is Dara, and as always, I'm here with my lovely co-host.
I'm Emily.
And we are here with you today to talk about Silence of the Lambs. If you can't read, that's the title of this episode. We are doing Snow Month.
It's The Shining.
Oh! I can't read. Okay.
I was like, are we doing Silence of the Lambs? I said we did Silence of the Lambs.
No, literally, look, I wrote at the top of my paper, Silence of the Lambs. What?
You were in a different headspace here.
What the hell is wrong with me?
I mean, it is a thriller, but
yeah, they do give similar vibes. Wow, okay, every week I accuse our audience of being illiterate because it's like my only opening bit. If I'm like, oh, haha, this is the name of the episode if you can't read, it's me this week. I played myself.
Finally caught up to you.
I know, right? The Shining. We're doing The Shining.
Yeah.
We're doing Imagine if I had watched Silence of the Lambs and we didn't even realize it until 6 minutes in that we had watched different movies. I mean, we've already done Silence of the Lambs.
I was gonna say, I would hope that you would have realized because we did do Silence of the Lambs.
Well, I guess just shouts out to our own Silence of the Lambs episode. If you like The Shining, you'll probably like our episode we did a couple months ago on Silence of the Lambs. So go trying to turn this into a shameless self-promotion. It's really not working. But we're doing The Shining this week. Our theme that we've been doing is Snow Month. And this is a snowy film. Mm-hmm. There's snow.
There's a lot of snow. Similarly to Fargo, which we did this month.
She's kind of her own character, yeah.
Yeah, Snow is her own character. She holds her own. She stands her ground. She is a big plot point. Because she does keep... I don't even know what their fucking names are besides Shelley Duvall and the kid. She does keep them from escaping from a good long while.
Yeah, right, Wendy and Danny. Does this movie pass the Bechdel test if Shelley Duvall is screaming in fear at the snow while she's running away from her axe murderer husband? The conversation is not going two ways, but I think maybe in a sense it is, because she is a force.
I'm glad that we've gendered the snow.
Snow is female. Snow is a woman. Well, because nature, all of nature
Mother Nature
is woman.
Snow, that is falling under Mother Nature's umbrella.
But this movie, so Stanley Kubrick, 1980, do you have any particular feelings about Stanley Kubrick as a director? Because I know, a lot of, film people who are, love movies are diehard obsessed with his work.
I haven't honestly seen, tons of it. I mean, I remember watching, A Clockwork Orange when I was, 15 or something like that. And I was like, okay, this is a good movie, but this is a lot. And also, I'm 15 years old.
Yeah.
And it's one of those ones that, I want to revisit. I watched this for the first time last year, honestly. And, I mean, I don't want to say I was, blown away, but I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a great movie. Other than that, the only movie that, of his that I have, really strong opinions about is, Full Metal Jacket. I watched maybe the first 40 minutes of it, and I will say that I hated it, and I turned it off.
Yeah,
what about
I do think it's pretty polarizing stuff. I wouldn't say I'm, a diehard fan. I think more I can recognize when something is objectively impressive and good versus my own opinion, because, I'm an unreliable narrator, right? I don't trust myself. Yeah. And I recognize that my own opinions, really aren't great. But I do have the capacity to...
Yeah. I hope everyone here realizes that we're unreliable narrators.
If you realize that the two of us so unqualified to be talking about literally anything, if you came here for, facts, smart talk, or insights... I'm so sorry, but you should probably go find a different podcast.
Yeah, click off.
We are gonna we're gonna talk about who we want to fuck later though, so stick around for that. Yeah. But I can objectively agree with people that Stanley Kubrick is a genius.
For sure.
Totally changed the game, did things nobody ever did before. I would say this is the only movie that really does it for me. from him. I always think they're a little slow, a little too long, a little doing the most. And I'm just like not, they kind of feel for the boys for me, you know?
No, I get that.
Like, I don't know. But I do agree that objectively very good. But like, I wanted to kind of start off this conversation because it's really interesting. And I do feel kind of personally conflicted because I love this movie. I would put this in like top 15 of all time. Best movies. I love it. But Stanley Kubrick is a fucking asshole. And the way he treated specifically Shelley Duvall on set is so appalling. And I just think that the way we treat people is more important than the art we make, you know? And so I'm like,
hold on, can you speak to what exactly like what happened on set? Because I've heard like things here and there, and obviously like I get the tidbits of it, and I know he was a dick. But I haven't like done like my full research, and I feel like there's a handful of people listening that probably are on the same page as me.
Yeah, so if you're not super familiar with this film, but also all of his films, he really likes to kind of push the actors like to their breaking points almost, which I think a lot of actors probably kind of know getting into Stanley Kubrick works. Like, they're very intense stories, very intense, you know, source material. You know, if you're like doing A Clockwork Orange, obviously you're gonna have to get into some sort of like really intense mental headspace to play that character. I mean, same for this or really any of his other movies. But I just think you don't have to like abuse people emotionally and mentally. So what you can kind of look more, if anyone wants the full story, there's a lot of good, just literally Google like Shelley Duvall, Stanley Kubrick, The Shining, and I'm sure like the first 10 articles will all be about how she's kind of spoken out, and Jack Nicholson and a ton of the people who worked on the staff of the movie kind of spoke out about how he would berate her, he would insult her, tell her that her takes were, that she's worthless. And basically what he was trying to do was like be that abusive husband character to get her to that breaking point so that she would give that performance, which she does. But he made her do the take of, where she's on the where she has the baseball bat and she's on the stairs and she's kind of swinging downwards and she's screaming and crying. I think it was a record-breaking number. No scene in a movie has ever been taken more times. He made her do it like 600 times. I'm probably exaggerating, but so like she was so physically exhausted. We're like, yes, you want to, you know, have a lot of takes, but at a certain point it is excessive, and it was bullying. Like, he was just bullying her, and I believe the take they used in the movie was like take 3 or 4.
Oh yeah,
you know,
does not shock me.
So you can so you can say like, oh, he made her do it 600 times, and the best one was the 600th one. Like, no, that's just simply not true. So, and she was so stressed while filming this movie that her hair started to fall out. She was having nervous breakdowns, and like, again, if it's permeating that much where it's affecting your health, like, just not fucking cool, right? And I'm like, I'm sure the movie would have been just as good if he didn't be such a fucking asshole, like, to specifically to her. Like, he also was doing it to Jack Nicholson to kind of, but like not nearly to the extent. And Jack Nicholson has said, he's like, I've never seen somebody put up with so much. But yeah, if you want more details, I mean, I know I'm kind of speaking in vague relative terms, but you can go kind of read what happened in more detail. But it's just a bummer because I like this movie a lot. And I like to watch it, but it does make me a little sad that I like look deep into Wendy's big doe eyes, and I'm like, oh, Shelley. And he like would tell staff to not help her, like he would bully her and like she would go cry or something, and he'd be like, if anyone goes and consoles her, you're fired. Like, basically being like, nobody be nice to her, nobody show her any sympathy, like, we need to break her emotionally. And I'm just like, oh, I want to give Shelley Duvall a hug. And that's where I think she didn't act a ton after this, because she was like fucking traumatized.
Yeah, like, that's the crazy thing too, is like, that's the thing about acting, is it's acting. Like, you don't need to put this person into, like, an entire, like, state for this. Like, that's that their entire job.
It's their job.
Their entire job is to perform. This is not a performance at a certain point.
Yeah, right? It's like, we're actually gonna stab her. Realism. But yeah, like I said, it always makes me feel a little conflicted, because knowing that kind of gives me less respect for obviously him as a director and just this as a piece of art. I'm like, if they felt like they had to do that to her in order to get this performance out of her, then it's not worth it. It is one of the best performances in a horror movie, I think, ever. I'm not a huge horror person, so I can't really speak to the genre as a whole. And I think we've said before, I personally am more like psychological thriller. I like the more suspense or like implied horror than actual like slasher films per se, which
I wanted to ask. I was like, do you feel like this falls into the horror genre more so or thriller? Because I've been like, I was talking to like, I was like, oh, like who wants to watch this with me? It's like a thriller movie sort of thing, like talking to my roommates. And I coined it as a thriller to them. Like, where do you feel like it falls?
I would agree with you, but also if somebody called it a horror movie, I wouldn't correct them.
Okay.
You know, I wouldn't like argue like, oh, this is not a horror movie. Like, yeah, I would say that's accurate, but I would say if I had to choose between those two terms, like, yeah, psychological thriller or thriller would probably be what I go for. But it's based off of Stephen King book, and Stephen King is like horror. Like that's his genre, right?
I do forget that this is Stephen King.
Yeah, it's actually changed quite a bit from, I mean, the book and the movie are similar enough, but the book is really different. I read it when I was maybe 13, and I do not remember a lot about it. I had a Stephen King phase where I was, like, in 7th grade, and I was reading The Green Mile,
Christ.
And my teachers were like, hey, like, you know, it's not super age inappropriate for you to be reading The Green Mile at SSR, but also, like, do your parents know you're reading this? And I'm like, oh, yeah, don't worry, like...
They bought me the book.
It's fine, but yeah, no, but right, I think I read like Misery, The Green Mile, and The Shining like all in a row during SSR period of 7th grade.
See,
so I don't retain a ton of it.
See, I was reading The Hunger Games over and over.
They're like, wow, Emily, that's really taken you a long time, and you're like, nah, 9th way through. Like,
honestly, yeah.
But I do know that Stephen King has spoken a lot about how that I think he handpicked Stanley Kubrick to do, he's like, yeah, you're the guy for it, but also, like, as an author at a certain point, you just kind of relinquish, like, you're gonna do what you want with my book to make your movie. It's not Stephen King's movie, it's Stanley Kubrick's movie. But he has said before, he's like, this isn't really my book. He's like, this is like a film adaptation inspired by my book, but he's like, as far as like character depth and details, he's like, this movie is very nice to look at and it's very interesting to watch, but it's simply not the book I wrote.
Yeah, that's one of those things that like, well, okay, specifically one thing that I wish the movie touched on, and I'm sure that the book did, is like describing what the actual, like, The Shining is and all that shit. You know what I mean? Like, and we should probably give a little recap for anyone that needs to hear it. But they don't quite explain it so much. They're just like, oh, Danny has a gift. He can hear and see things. And da-da-da-da. And that's kind of all you get.
Right. I forget the name of the chef of the hotel who also has The Shining, who has that really, like, what is it called? Like exposition, like a really expository dialogue session with Danny, who's not very responsive, where he's just like, I'm going to tell you what The Shining is. And then he like monologues at him for like 5 minutes. And it's like not really giving us a ton of info. It's like, he's just like, my grandma and I can read minds and you can do it too. Really interesting. Now I'm going to abandon you.
Exactly.
Like,
and that was
it's just kind of like,
it's like, oh, you can...
And that's all we get.
You can see fucked up shit, and fucked up shit that happened here, and da-da-da-da, and the future, and the past, and that's kind of it. Which also, like, I feel like... And I wanted to ask you if you've seen this, but there's a sequel to this movie that just came out, like, a couple of years ago, called, was it Dr. Sleep or something like that? With our personal favorite, Ewan McGregor. I haven't seen it. It looked interesting. It got, I think, terrible reviews.
Yep. So I personally have not seen it. I didn't have a ton of interest when it came out. I'm not really here for the either sequel or remake decades after. You know, like, oh, we're gonna do a Ghostbusters sequel. Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, nobody fucking cares. It's just clearly like a cash grab thing. But Dr. Sleep was a book. Stephen King wrote Dr. Sleep, you know, the sequel book, so at least there's some merit there, but I did not see it. But pretty interestingly, a podcast that I love, which I'm sure a ton of people who listen to this also listen to Trixie and Katya's podcast. They're from Drag Race. It's called, The Bald and the Beautiful. They don't need our press here, but obviously huge shouts out to them. But they recently have both been just talking about that movie a lot for some reason. I'm like, you guys know this came out like 4 years ago, but they both are like, oh yeah, Dr. Sleep. And it really kind of piqued my interest that the two of them liked it so much, but also I don't really know if I trust their taste to align with my own per se as far as like movies. But yeah, the two of them have been talking about Dr. Sleep like kind of a lot their past couple of episodes. As I drive from Syracuse to Massachusetts, I usually, binge whatever I haven't listened to. So that's kind of intrigued me. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll give it a go. Also, Ewan. Yeah. I know Rebecca Ferguson is in it, who she was just in Dune, and she was so good. So maybe I'll give it a try, but highly doubtful. Yeah. Like a 4 out of 10 chance that I'll probably get around to that.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that's like low on the list, but you're like, I could watch it.
Yeah. Right, if it was on in my house,
yeah,
I might stop.
Yeah.
But
do we want to do a brief recap? I feel like there's not a ton to get into with this movie. It's pretty basic plot, honestly.
Yeah, as far as like raw plot, basically, what's their last name? Dawson? Jack
Nicholson.
Wendy,
and Danny.
Jack Nicholson plays Jack, and he was a school teacher, but then he stopped being a school teacher, and then also he hit his son once when he was drunk, and then he was like, oh, I'll never drink alcohol again. They've kind of been moving around. Danny was pulled out of school because of his injury from said, drunken beating, so their family's kind of in limbo, and he takes this job at the Overlook Hotel to be the caretaker during the winter months when the hotel isn't open because the roads are too snowy, which doesn't make a ton of sense, but I guess we're just gonna go with it. And so they move, basically, I think they said it was like from what, like May? October to May. Yeah. So from October to May, which is 4 months?
That is October, very much November, not December. 4 months.
October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. 8
That's
months.
A lot of months.
For 8 months, they're gonna live by themselves in this huge hotel, and basically his job is to just kind of upkeep, deal with situations as they arise, make sure, that the electricity is, running and the heating and stuff like that. And so he takes this job and they move their little family, up there, and then the guy who gives him the job is like, hey, just want to let you know, the last guy who did this job did axe murder his whole family. And Jack's like, ha ha ha, couldn't be me. I'm a writer, and I'm gonna write so mmany books. And he's like, well, that sounds really great. You sound like you have a really good grip on your own mental health. So like he didn't have to like pass a background check or like a mental health exam to do this. I mean, it was 1980. If it was today, I think you'd probably have to go through many screenings. If there had been an axe murder, like, I don't know. But they move up there, and then pretty quickly he starts to get kind of unhinged. He's like, this book I'm writing is not going well. Every time his wife, Shelley Duvall, aka Wendy, is like, I made you a sandwich, he's like, I'm gonna fucking murder you. And she's like, haha, you're so funny. But also, like, she's a little scared. And then Danny also can talk to ghosts. He has a imaginary friend, but also it's The Shining, and he calls him Tony, and he says that Tony is a little boy who lives in my mouth, which if my fucking kid was saying shit like that, it would be game over. I would say boarding school.
Yeah, no, you're not staying with
therapy 6 days a week.
You're not staying with me, brother.
And he does this little like finger waggy motion, and he talks like, he's like, no, hard no.
Absolutely not.
Send the child away. Otherwise, Danny seems like a pretty well-adjusted kid.
I don't know about that, but that's very debatable, but...
but so they're, like, just living up there. It's snowing. They're basically trapped inside, and he gets cabin fever. He starts talking to this, like, bartender who is a ghost, and he starts seeing all these ghosts, and then he decides to axe murder his family. Danny gets strangled by a woman in a bathtub who's also a ghost, and then Jack is like, I'm gonna fuck the ghost, but then it turns out the ghost is a slimy old woman, and he was like, I will not be fucking this ghost. And then he runs back around, and he's like, I'm gonna axe murder my whole family, and Shelley Duvall's like, no! And then she runs away, and then she's got the bat, and then she's swinging at him with the bat, she knocks him out, she locks him in the freezer, but then a ghost lets him out of the freezer, and then he axes his way through the door as Shelley Duvall's screaming for her life. Danny crawls out a window. Also, the cook from earlier was getting some spidey sense about what has been happening. So he goes from Florida back to Colorado because he's like, I gotta see what's going on. He gets axe murdered trying to save Danny because they can telecommunicate through their minds, I guess. And then Danny escapes, Wendy escapes, they run through a maze, Jack freezes out in the snow, everyone lives happily ever after. I think that was a little messy.
No, well, yes, but you got the majority of the plot. I feel like you got the point across, so
thank you. That was one of my lesser recaps.
The living happily ever after, I'm not sure about. There's going to be a lot of family therapy and trauma to go around after that. I do think Danny needs a lot of help.
And my whole thing was like, okay, so Jack Nicholson, there's this we don't see it on screen, but they reference it, this event in which he came home too drunk, he grabbed Danny's arm, and he dislocated his shoulder. And that kind of gave Shelley Duvall kind of like, oh, my husband has the capacity to really, like, hurt me and my kid. And showing that he has, like, a little bit of tendance for, like, violence maybe, but then he's like, I'm gonna quit drinking, and she's like, sounds like a deal. This whole thing transpired, and they pulled him out of school. So they were like, he has a dislocated shoulder, so he can't go back to whatever, fucking kindergarten, first grade.
Yeah.
Then they're like, we're gonna move to an isolated house, and I did not see 1 ounce of effort from fucking Wendy that she was gonna homeschool this child. They're like, he's gonna ride his bike around in circles, and his development will not be stunted even a little.
Where were the workbook? Nowhere to be seen. Where
was baby Einstein?
Couldn't say.
Like, right? Even, like Sudoku. Teach him how to do Sudoku. Anything. Is that beyond, like, a second grade level? He was just riding his bike in circles. I'm like, he is going to be so behind when you eventually have to leave here and go to a school, and he's in 3rd grade, and he can't fucking read.
I'll tell you what.
I'm not calling Wendy a bad mom, but I just think she could have... She's just ripping cigs inside.
Well, she was too busy fucking making Jack sandwiches half of the time.
Right.
I was sitting there, I was like, okay, you have this entire hotel to yourself, and you're sitting there still doting on your husband? Dog.
Yeah, who clearly, like, screams at you every time you're even in a vicinity. I'd be like, I'm out.
Here's my thing, is if mind you, like, I get there's a child present, take the child out of the equation for right now. If I had an entire hotel to myself, I'd be walking around naked. Everywhere. You know how many good fire fits you had, like, just around the house? Which, like, I get, because I feel like I did that, like, a year ago or so when we were, like, in, like, real lockdown and all that shit. And I was like, okay, I need to put on, like, a real outfit just to, like, feel like I'm a real person and everything like that. But if I had a whole hotel to myself, titties out, dude.
I know. I specifically wanted to bring up that outfit where she has in the kind of final stretch of the movie. Like, that's 2021. Your gaydar should be, if she's dressed like Shelley Duvall, you know it's a go.
Yeah.
Like, she's a lesbian if she has on overalls, a flannel, and a knit turtleneck.
Oh, yeah.
This whole time, I'm like, this was on a mannequin at Urban Outfitters 6 months ago. Like, Shelley was ahead of her time with this fit, I must say.
Urban had that in their Pride collection.
But yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point that I just don't think this story hits quite as hard post-COVID. I mean, not that we're in a post-COVID world, but like post-super lockdown where almost everyone has experienced at least some extended period of time being isolated either with themselves or their roommates or their family. The concept of being in this beautiful hotel and having to stay inside for however many months is simply not that out of the question for us. I was like, this beautiful kitchen, these beautiful stainless steel appliances, you could fuck up some dope recipes, learn to bake. I'm out here being like, if I had to do COVID in that hotel, I wouldn't have axe murdered my family. None of us axe murdered our family, and we had to do it. So, I mean, obviously there were no ghosts, at least not for me. I'm like present,
was that just me? Was that only me?
But I really think that this story just quite does not have that edge of like, oh wow, we really get that cabin fever is a real thing, or like, oh, if I had to do this, maybe I would feel like, no, we literally know what it's like. And yeah, it's not easy, but like...
Here's the thing, is if you don't have a connection to your family, then I can see where you might go crazy, because these people don't have a connection to their family. Me and my family, we literally, at the beginning, when we were, like, getting really antsy, we were like, we're gonna have spirit days. And we had, like, a couple of spirit days just to, like, keep the morale up and shit like that.
I was obsessed with that. It was spirit days as in, like, when you're in high school, or at least in our high school in America, it was a thing where there'd be a week of the year where it's like, Monday is tie-dye day, Tuesday is dress up like your favorite movie character day, or, you know, like, stupid little themes and, like, spirit weeks. And it was so good over COVID. You and your siblings came up with these, like, really great spirit day ideas, and you did little outfits. Yeah, coming up with, like, fun activities to do with your family. I'm like, they didn't bring any board games.
For real.
Shelley Duvall, you didn't bring you didn't bring Monopoly.
Yeah. You're not out here playing Catan? Like, what are you doing?
Come on, Wendy. Settlers of Catan? You didn't think to pack that one? Scrabble?
Anything. Literally anything.
Yeah, maybe if your husband wasn't such a horrid human being, they could have ripped out some Catan. Also, Danny's 7, so I think it would have just been...
That's the other thing is, like, and I'm sure it was intentional, but, like, the whole thing of, like, Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall having no chemistry at all, or at least intentionally no...
Oh,
yeah,
it was
exactly.
so intentional, yeah.
But, like, I would hate... Imagine, like, inserting yourself into that situation, like, you sitting down and playing, like... Imagine having to play Uno with that family.
So awkward.
Horrifying.
So awkward. Yeah, I guess if I was Shelley Duvall, I simply would have taken Danny into the East Wing, or like that building's so fucking big. Just take him somewhere else, and the two of you can bull out. Yeah, please homeschool your child. Teach him the violin.
One horrible father, person, human being. Yes. One thing I will give him is that I would also go a little crazy if there was no liquor in the hotel for 8 months.
Right? Yeah, they were like, we don't keep it for insurance reasons. And I'm like, but can I not? It's like a cruise. When you sneak liquor onto a cruise and you, like, pour it into water bottles and then you, like, refactory seal He's like, yeah, I just bought 18 cases of Nestle Life water. Don't worry about it. It's just a personal thing. That would have been me. Sneaking booze onto the cruise.
Like, going back to COVID, like, there was definitely, like, I was sitting there and I was like, well... We're all just kind of hanging out, gonna watch a movie, gonna get a little drunk. Me and Dara are gonna watch a movie, and now we have a podcast.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is fully how you and I started our podcast, was over COVID feeling sad and lonely. Maybe Shelley Duvall just needed to start a podcast. Maybe they could have Tony on as a guest. Tony could do his little ghost shining and, like, give us some oracle insights about the future. Honestly, I think it would hit.
I'd listen.
They get signed on by, like, NPR or something. Barstool. Wendy for Barstool, The Overlook. It would be called, like, Overlooking the Facts with Shelley Duvall. And I think this was the real solution. She just needed to bring a podcast mic.
You're right. Well, if Shelley Duvall wants to ever come on a podcast, the swamp is here.
And just know that every time I watch this movie, all I think about is how much I want to give you a hug. That's the situation. Because I think her performance in this is fucking brilliant. It gives me very Toni Collette Hereditary energy, as in, like, she is stealing every scene that she's in because she's doing the most in the way that I want her to be doing the most. As far as, like, not even just, like, women in horror, but just, like, horror performances, or I guess, like, thriller, psychological thriller performances.
Yeah, no, it definitely gave me that, like, whole thing of, like, I feel like women a lot of the time will act like things are okay when they're not okay, sort of thing, which was, like, her entire performance is putting up that front of being like, okay, this shit's fucked, but you know what? No, it's really not. It's not that bad. I can handle it. Because this entire movie is her going back and forth between her fucked up husband and her fucked up son, and then acting like everything is so fine.
But also, though, like, I'm gonna be really nice right now, because if I say the wrong thing, you might deck me in the face. Like, at every given moment, like, it speaks to him like she's walking on eggshells, and I think that's so true of so many, like, abusive or manipulative relationships that you're, like, you know, tiptoeing around.
Also, there's that scene where it's, like, Jack is, like, dreaming or whatever, and he's screaming, and she goes and wakes her up, or she goes and wakes him up. And he was like, yeah, I dreamed about killing you so hard, dude. And she's like, okay, all right, yeah, no, that's fine. I'd be out the door if my partner ever said that. I'd be like, nope, all right, I'm good.
Right? That's why I'm like, homie, you didn't have to tell her. You could have been like, oh my god, I had a crazy dream. I was getting eaten by a elephant seal. And she'd been like, wow, that is really scary. You know, oh, I murdered you and our son in our dream. Haha, I'm so quirky. I guess I'm just a Scorpio. Like, no. Red flag. Her character is, I'm not going to say she's bad at identifying red flags, because I think she knows that they're there. She just feels trapped and doesn't know how to address it. But I'm like, girl, if you did not see this coming from a mile away.
He told you. He did tell you.
Yeah. Verbatim.
Which one thing I do want to bring up is that, and I can't say this came from my own brain, I did watch this with Kesty, who some of you might remember from being on our Die Hard episode. But we're watching this and she looks at me and she says, you know what? I think Jack is just vitamin D deficient. That's it.
He needs to take a single Flintstones gummy. He needs to take a Tums, a Flintstones gummy, and have a little bit of a lay down. And it's just gonna set him right.
It would have been fine. Everyone would have lived happily ever after.
A little cup of OJ,
Easy,
a little cup of orange juice, maybe some animal crackers. It could have, yeah, I agree. Also, yeah, imagine how pale you would be. Imagine living inside at that hotel all winter and then just like going to the beach and getting blasted with vitamin D. They would need a sad lamp. They needed sad lamps at the Overlook Hotel for sure.
It's like, have you ever, do you watch Broad City? Yeah, so
of course.
You know the episode where Lana's like in the back room, like with the tinfoil all around? Yeah, no, they needed that.
And I think Danny just needs some fidget toys, some like stimulation
little
toys.
poppets.
If they gave him like, if they give him like a poppet or a fidget cube or like something. I also think if we maybe just get some enrichment for this child, like a mind game, a puzzle. A little, teach like a Rubik's Cube, maybe?
Oh, he would have fucked up a Rubik's Cube.
Right. Yeah, I think a little bit of enrichment for this family could have solved a couple of problems. Mm-hmm. They didn't really seem to bring a lot of, like Jack brought stuff to write a book, which is, like, fair, but I'm like, you guys didn't seem, like, Danny brought some toys, but there's not a lot of, like, enrichment. There doesn't seem to be a lot of activities or entertainment.
There's a game room. Like you said, I would be fucking up the kitchen because that is the most stimulating thing to me and for me. For a 7-year-old,
I don't know. Like, at first, as far as fucking up the kitchen, I was like, I don't know, because no fresh produce. You gotta basically use what's in that pantry, which was, like, a lot of, like, Heinz relish in gallon cans. So, like, maybe not necessarily, but then when they bring them into that meat locker, I'm like, oh, I would get so fire at barbecue. I would, like,
dude, right? Racks of lamb? Like, come on.
Right? It's like, if you maybe don't have the most to work with, but, like, that meat locker really turned around my perspective. I was like, oh, no. It could happen. And also baking. I feel like you don't need, the only thing, fresh you generally need is, like, eggs.
Flour, sugar, milk, eggs.
Some meat pies. Shelley Duvall could have started a meat pie business. Well, I don't know how they would have shipped them. All right, so we're here, as always, with Jen for an interim segment of Chocolate or Vanilla. It's a game we play halfway through the podcast, hosted by my mom, Jen. The rules are that she's going to say two things, and we just say which one we like better. And there's usually a theme. Is there a theme this week?
Hi, how are you guys doing?
I'm great.
Okay.
Outstanding.
Excellent. There is a theme. Okay, it's a two-parter. First is words that end in ing, like Shining. And second is Stephen King movies.
Okay.
Ooh,
So,
a two-parter.
Yep, first half, second half kind of thing.
Interesting. Okay.
All right, I like it.
All right, chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Vanilla.
Chocolate. Hiking or rock wall climbing?
Definitely go with rock wall climbing. For like 2 years, I've like weirdly picked up rock climbing as like a hobby and like did like 2 competitions. Like, I am not athletic, but I got really into it. Yeah, I got really into it. But then over the peak of COVID and then also moving, I ended up just, because you gotta kind of like go to an indoor space to do it. So I haven't been in a really long time, but any rock climbers out there, I don't know, hit me up. I don't know what, but if we have any listeners who rock climb, that's very cool.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say I hike more than rock climbing, but there was a point in time where I kind of sort of like started bouldering for a minute. I didn't like catch on because I was like, okay, this is like a lot of money for a membership at a gym.
It's not free.
But I really enjoyed it, so I'm gonna go with rock climbing. I can't do the big tall ones because I'm scared of heights, but I will boulder anytime because I think it's a blast.
Can you guys do that thing where they put the strip in between two clamps or two trees and like you walk across it like a balance beam?
It's called slacklining,
Yeah.
and no, I cannot. It's very hard.
Yeah, it's really hard.
I don't have the balance for that shit, no.
I would pick hiking because I like hiking, but I don't know. You can edit this out if you want. But the first time I ever took Dara rock wall climbing,
I'm going to say I was like, what, 9?
probably give or take, and the next day she comes into my room with her hands like this, like flexed up, and she's crying. She goes, something's wrong with me. I can't squeeze the toothpaste. But it's because she had worked her forearms so hard rock wall climbing that she was like in spasm.
I like couldn't get the toothpaste out of the toothpaste bottle, and I was like, literally, my life is ending right now. Like, what is happening to me?
Yeah, no, that sounds like you.
Drama queen.
Next, singing or dancing?
Oh, I'm gonna say dancing, because you can be a bad dancer and still do it, and it can be fun. But if you're a bad singer, it's just not enjoyable for yourself or anyone else. So I kind of have fun. I'm not a good dancer, but I still like flail my body around my kitchen while I'm like cooking or something. So I'll go with dancing.
I'm gonna go with singing because here's the thing is that I can have no one witness me singing and just sit there and sing in my car, so...
That's exactly what I was thinking.
No one has to know. It's just me in the air.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like singing because you can just do it when
like,
you want.
I do Whitney in my car, but I don't enjoy it. It's still, it's bad.
I love it. It's therapy.
Drinking or eating?
Well. Actually, I mean, okay, if I had to give up, like, booze or cheese, I think I'd pick booze. Like, I think food fills a special place in my life as far as, like, I can rebound from any kind of bad day with a good meal kind of thing. So I will say eating, but my instinct was to say drinking because I just thought you were referring to alcohol.
I think I was, yeah.
Yeah, no. Similarly to Dara, gut reaction, drinking. But, like you said, if I'm trying to brighten up my day, a good, nice, lovely meal is gonna do it. And I can only drink 2 days in a row without feeling incredibly depressed afterwards. So, and you know what that doesn't do, or you know what doesn't do that to me is eating good food. So I'll stick with eating.
Okay, you guys have convinced me to go with eating also.
I'm glad that you needed convincing.
Yelling or screaming?
Ooh.
Can you so yelling is on purpose and screaming is involuntary?
No, they're both voluntary.
Well,
Yelling would be
here's my thing is when I think of yelling, I think of yelling at someone. Screaming, I feel like I could just scream into the void. You know what I mean?
Into the pillow. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I come on this podcast every week and yell. That's all I'm doing ever. So I'm a yeller. I'm just yelling. Right now I'm yelling. For 44 minutes and 29 seconds now, I have been yelling. It's just my truth. This is the reality I live in. I'm a yeller.
Just when I think about my regular day-to-day, I feel like I yell more. For anyone that has ever lived in or been in Connecticut, if you've ever driven through Connecticut traffic, you can agree with me that you are yelling. So I feel like I do that a lot. I feel like I've gotten really good at it. So I'll go with yelling. Screaming feels like a last resort. Like if I have no other coping mechanisms, then I will just sit in my car and scream because I need a moment to myself. But I'd rather not be there, so I'd rather yell.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna go with yelling too. Going out to the movies or staying home and binge watching.
I love the movie theater, and I've recently realized how much I missed going out. We've been to a handful of movies. I like to go on like a Wednesday afternoon show, so there's not a ton of people there, and it's just some movies are just better in the theater. Like, we watched Dune the day it came out on HBO, and I was like, yeah, this is fine. And then I went and saw it in a theater 2 weeks later, and I was like, oh, I fucking get it now. It's like, that's a movie that's meant to be watched in the theater. And some, you just have a different experience with it. And I don't know. I love the excuse to go somewhere and do something. So I'll say the movie theater.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's not, pomp and circumstance isn't the right word for it, but the ritual of going to the theater and getting your popcorn and finding your seat and getting comfortable and then going to pee right before the movie starts, you know what I mean? Definitely, don't get me wrong, I also, I love to sit on my couch and binge watch things. I think that's, the only thing I did all of this weekend is I watched, 4 or 5 movies in a row. But going to a theater does, I think, just elevate the experience a little bit more.
All right, Green Mile or Pet Sematary?
I love the Green Mile.
That's morbid.
I know. I read that book when I was, maybe in 7th grade. I just like it. I think the movie's good. Again, very long and very sad, and something I think I only have watched maybe once or twice because it's just a lot. But I do really love The Green Mile.
Mm-hmm. It is a really good movie. It is really sad and fucked up. But I will agree with you there on The Green Mile over Pet Sematary.
Yeah, me too. I love a good ensemble cast too. That had a really good cast. Misery or Shawshank Redemption?
Oh, that's so hard, Jen. I love Kathy Bates. But I think that objectively Shawshank Redemption is a better movie than Misery. But I do love Kathy Bates.
Yeah, fair. Unfortunately, I haven't seen Misery. I've seen in bits and pieces, honestly, Shawshank Redemption. I don't think I've ever gone through it fully. Which feels like a sin in itself, but I will still say Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, I'm going to say Shawshank. I love Kathy Bates, too, though. Firestarter or Stand By Me?
Oh, Stand By Me. This is easy. So hard. You're really making me realize how many, really brilliant Stephen King movie adaptations there are. I feel like we could do a whole month of just, really great Stephen King movies.
Honestly,
Stand By Me.
We probably should. Yeah, no, Stand By Me for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Stand By Me. Cujo or Christine?
I haven't seen either of those, but I do know that Cujo's about a dog.
And Christine's about a car.
Oh.
Like a possessed car.
Interesting. I'll still go with Cujo.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Cultural relevance, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like I know more about Cujo. I don't think I've ever heard anything about Christine, so.
All right, I'll go with Christine. I think that came out when I was in high school. It was really terrifying. Last one, Carrie or It?
Well, the remake of Carrie starring Chloe Grace Moretz was the first R-rated movie I ever saw in the theater, and it was the morning of my freshman homecoming dance. so that is a fact about me. But I'm gonna pick It. Just more. I'm not even gonna say more iconic because I would say Carrie and It are both iconic in their own ways. But I definitely think I enjoyed It more than even the remake too. I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Whereas the remake of Carrie was not good.
No, remake of Carrie was shit garbage. But I loved the remake of It. I thought all of the child performances were outstanding. And
the casting
was so good. Second one, could not care less about it, but the first part I really liked, so I'll just go with that, with It. Agreed. For that reason.
All right, I'm going to take Carrie because I never read It, I never saw It, so...
I do not know her. Yeah. If I saw her walking down the street, I would not know who she is.
So that was it.
Thank you.
Outstanding.
Yeah,
Thanks,
This was
Jen.
good. A nice
Thank
little two in one, a BOGO, if you will.
All right.
So thank you as always. I'll try to post these on our Instagram, so keep your eyes peeled so you can vote for your favorite ing, and also Stephen King ing.
Oh, with the ing, yeah.
Stephen King-ing. We'll have to workshop that one. But, so we'll put that out on our Instagram, and you can all vote for what things you like best. So as always, thank you so much, Jen.
All right, I love you guys, and if I don't see you, I'm Happy New Year.
Bye, Jen.
Okay, bye.
So quick turnaround. Can we talk about how this movie is honestly just kind of funny? Because
This movie is funny.
there are so many times where I'm just so thrown off because it's a quick shot to Danny, wide-eyed, mouth open, just tweaking out of nowhere. And it just makes me fucking cackle.
Are we talking about the manual zooms? Because I think that's one of my favorite things about this movie is they'll do a wide shot of a character and then a hard manual zoom in onto their face, and it's so funny. Every time. It happens like 4 or 5 times. It's so funny.
I could like piss myself because they're like every time they do it, I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is cinema, actually.
I was having a little bit of a riot because I watched this with all my brother-in-laws over the holiday, and we all just finished watching The Sopranos, and so every time he was like, Tony is a little boy that lives inside my mouth, we just would all start doing impressions like of Tony Soprano, but like in the little Tony voice, the like
Give me
gabagool, you zoom into Danny's mouth and it's just a tiny James Gandolfini like just hanging out.
Yeah, it's like if you could improve this movie in one way, this is the way that it would be,
Yes, yeah.
be bettered.
This movie and The Sopranos take place in the same fictional universe, and it's that Tony Soprano is The Shining.
No, I like that for you.
But even like the line like Tony is a little boy that lives inside my
Like,
mouth
what?
is really funny. Like, and he says it like 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, what?
I'm like, in what way does that even like make sense though? Like, I get.
Well, yeah, how does that even make sense to you, Danny? Like, you can just say that you're schizophrenic.
Just tell me. Just tell me that you're not neurotypical, dude. It's fine.
But he is that actor, so I looked up how old he was because I feel like I say this, I've said this like 4 weeks in a row now, where I'm like, I hate child actors, but
I like this one.
So-
he was spot on. He was so spot on.
right, and I like on record, I think statistically our audience could argue that I do like child actors because
Yeah,
I
no.
only bring it up like to complain about it, but I do think that this kid fucking nails it.
Mhm.
He fucking nails, especially like the really close shots of his face where he's like emoting. I'm like, and I looked up, he's 7. That kid was 7 years old. And
That's
I'm
one
like,
of those
he
things,
is serving.
Do you even
He's serving face.
Do you think he even realized he was making a movie at that point? Like, Jesus Christ. Wait, wasn't it
Yeah,
a
I
thing like they didn't tell him what the plot of the movie was because it was like too frightening for him or something like that? I feel like that's a fact. I could be pulling that entirely out of my ass, but I feel like that is
I
something
hadn't
knew.
heard that. I mean, I guess, but like he was there when Jack Nicholson was trying to fucking axe murder him, so he had to
I
know
don't
at
think
least
so.
that much.
I mean, like, I guess, like, they were, like, pulling him into the bathroom sort of thing, but, like, while Jack Nicholson was, like, cutting down the door, definitely not.
He was seizing and like grumbling in the voice of a ghost.
Let's do a
He-
quick Google.
Maybe that's how we have to film all movies now. It's like how Marvel movies, they don't tell any of them what the plot is so they don't spoil it. So Tom Holland just shows up to set and does a backflip and
Okay,
they're like,
via cheatsheet.com, Danny Lloyd, the little boy from The Shining, had no idea he was starring in one of the greatest horror movies of all time. Because of his young age, Stanley Kubrick decided not to tell him the plot of the movie. Instead, Lloyd assumed that he was acting in a drama film about a family that lives in a hotel.
but he said red rum and fucking referenced having a ghost in his mouth.
I mean, fair
I guess
enough, but
all
like...
7-year-olds are idiots, I guess.
Yes. Listen, I bet he didn't ask any questions.
Yeah, he was just there for the check.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just another
Fair
day's
enough.
work. But he also hasn't been in anything other than this. He was in the sequel. He was in Doctor Sleep. I think he was in The Shining, Doctor Sleep, and like maybe one other thing. His filmography is essentially only this.
Good for him, honestly.
Which is, yeah, I guess, but yeah, good for him for not getting caught up in the whirlwind of Hollywood. But I'm like, damn, he served this performance at 7 years old and then simply retired.
Everyone, I'll tell you what.
Wild.
Everyone put their whole pussy into this.
Yeah, it's because Stanley Kubrick was holding a gun to their head.
I mean, yeah, no, but like, it's one of those things. Like, I forget that Jack Nicholson. I forget that Jack Nicholson is a great actor, obviously. But it's one of those things. Like, watching this, you're like, oh goddamn, he is like one of the best of his time, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
You know what I was thinking this whole movie is. You and I have discussed this lightly, but like referenced it before, but you and I as a team composed a pretty fire 2020 election movie casting.
I wouldn't say as a team. I'd say you made 90% of it, and I suggested one person as Marianne.
But it was like, but it was maybe the best.
What did I say?
One
it
of
was
the whole thing. Jodie Foster as Marianne Williamson, which was fucking genius. Yeah. I think I just consulted with you. But anyways, I always am like trying to like fan cast in my head, like books I read or like real events. I don't know, because I'm mentally ill. But I think that Jack Nicholson could play Donald Trump so well.
Easily, yeah.
It's like if they like bleached his eyebrows, his like wonky eyebrows, if they bleached and gave him like orange face makeup, him in this. The, like, face he was serving, I was like, oh, you could do, like, a dope Trump, like, you know, performance of, like, that 100%. Kind of, like, on the edge, you know?
No, I totally agree with you.
And then I was trying to think of, like, who else could have done this role of Jack, I guess. And, like, the only thing that was coming to my mind was Jim Carrey, and this would be an entirely different movie if it had been Jim Carrey. But, like, sometimes the way he was contorting his face, I'm like, this is very Jim Carrey of you. Like, the way you're, like...
I have a question. Did this movie almost, like, lose you in the third act? Because here's my thing, is that I think one of the first notes that I have, about this is that 2.5 hours of a movie makes me want to die. Say what you will about me for that. I don't have the attention span at this point. 2.5 hours, unless it is God tier, is a lot for me. To be fair, if this movie is God tier, I did get put in my place because it was 2 hours in, I was like, okay, this hasn't lost me at all whatsoever. Fine. But there's just that weird, like, spot, like, in the middle of the third act. It's basically, like, after she hits Jack on the head with the baseball bat, and in between the, like, the axe scene, that I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm so bored.
Yeah, it's like she puts him in the meat freezer, and then she goes back, and then she falls asleep at one point, and then Danny does the red rum thing. It is very much weird pacing, I guess, which is how it's kind of supposed to feel.
Well, that's the thing, is that, like, the entire movie itself has incredibly good pacing. Because I knew it was a long movie, and I know I've seen it before and everything like that, but I was sitting there, I was like, okay, I'm not looking forward to watching 2.5 hours of this. And the first, like, 2 flew by. And then it was just really weird. Like, I don't know, it kind of lost me almost in the suspense of, like, it obviously, like, suspense itself has, like, to ebb and flow sort of thing. But it was that dip that I was like, okay, come on. Like, I know what's coming.
Especially when you do know what's coming, and you're like, I know that I have to sit here for another 15 minutes before the thing happens, basically. But I agree, I think this movie is too long. I am different to you, I think, in the way that I will watch all 3 Lord of the Rings movies back to back. Like, no, like, I don't have an attention span problem with movies per se, but I am really critical about, like, putting unnecessary shit, and I don't think anything is particularly unnecessary, but this movie is, 220 something long time? It could have been under 2 hours. There were some filler scenes that just happened like a little too long.
150 I could have done.
Right. This could have been an hour, 50-minute film, and I think it would have gotten the exact same artistic message across without losing really anything. Even just, like, lingering shots on
That's
something.
because they needed to.
that I'm like, that was
They needed to shoot Shelley Duvall's distress for way longer.
right. But even like sweeping shots of the hotel or something, I'm like, that was 9 seconds long, and it could have been literally 1 or 2.
That is one thing that I will
Like-
say that I was not mad about was the cinematography and the really hot hotel that they shot this in.
Oh yeah, and like the beautiful mountainous scenery and the like the set design and the decor, that like very 1960s, the carpets, the furniture. It was definitely all
Gorgeous.
very beautiful and nice
Yeah.
to look at. Like, and even the scene where Danny's riding his little tricycle around the hotel for like 9.5 fucking minutes. I'm like, I'm not bothered because it was like it was, like,
Visually
pretty to
great,
watch.
yeah.
Right, but there were even like a few conversations between like that scene where Danny goes into the bedroom and Jack Nicholson is supposed to be asleep and then he like goes over and sits on his lap. I'm like, that whole thing transpired and it could have just been like a second, you know, to
was
accomplish
5
what you
minutes.
did with that whole scene, right?
Yeah.
So I agree that in the third act things get kind of slow. I think the whole movie is a little bit slow, but I do agree that things are happening, and I think I have specific memories of scenes from this movie because they're iconic, but I don't always remember in like what order they happen, you know?
Yeah.
Like obviously she hits him with the baseball bat and then he kills her and then they escape or whatever, but like those little filler things, like, and then they're running around the maze, and then Danny is backtracking and his
Yeah.
just steps in the snow in the maze, and then this and then that. and I was just like,
Chronologically,
oh,
it doesn't stick.
doesn't always add up to me. I'm like, yeah, I remember the here's Johnny Axe scene. I remember that they go through the maze at some point. I remember the scene with the baseball bat and the stairs. But yeah, those little times in between, I'm like, what is happening here?
I'll tell you the one fucking scene I remember is that creepy ass bathroom scene with Jack Nicholson and the beautiful woman that immediately turns into a corpse.
Honestly, I would have been like, you got me. He freaks the fuck. I would have been like, sick prank, girlfriend. You got me. But they do show full frontal nudity in this movie, which is something I kind of forget because she's in the bathtub and she's naked, but she just stands up and it's like a
Pussy
full
out.
panning shot
Yeah.
of her body, pussy out for like a minute
my
and a
thing.
half, and I'm like, we get
Here's
it.
my favorite detail is no matter how you present yourself, whatever, do your thing. It doesn't matter. But my favorite detail was that what is it when it's this beautiful, gorgeous woman walking out of the bathtub, she got full bush. It turns to frickin' this pretty much rotting corpse, and she went and she got waxed before this.
They put a little prosthetic piece over her vulve. And they were like, only hot girls have bush. Sorry. Simply could not be you, swamp creature rotting
Yeah,
flesh.
your skin
much.
is falling off of you, but your pussy is slick.
But he's like horrified that he would be kissing this like ugly corpse lady. And I'm like, I don't know what you got into. You just kissed her with you didn't even, you don't know her name. You don't know her story. You don't know the first thing.
My question is, do you think Jack Nicholson was fighting for his life when he had to shoot that scene? Like, with, like, I mean, honestly, both takes, really.
Oh, what? That he had a raging boner?
Here's my thing, is I want to know what courtesy-wise in Hollywood is. It's like, is it worse if you don't get a boner when you're kissing a gorgeous woman? Or is it worse if you do get one? What's...
I am not a Hollywood actress, but I do know that like production makes special underwear that holds the dick back.
Wow.
So like it's kind of like a sock, I think almost, that kind of pins it to the inside of the leg. So for like full on sex scenes, you can be basically all the way hard and you're not like poking them in the stomach. Essentially, is they give them like special like sex scene underwear, so they're like, you can have a boner and it's not gonna like be an issue. At least in modern you know, filmmaking.
But this was
in like
1980.
the 2000s. But I think you can kind of tuck it
The waistband.
at least
yeah,
up
put it
into
in
the waistband. Yeah, so
Classic trick.
right. I don't know if getting a boner from just like, I mean, I guess she's fully nude and she's very attractive.
She's fully naked.
So I would have, I'd be like, why the fuck are you soft? That's how Stanley Kubrick is bullying Jack Nicholson into getting a boner. That's the psychological trauma he had to go through. He's like, what, are you fucking soft right now? He's got like one of those megaphones.
Get it up! Oh my goodness. Yeah, no. The duality of the filming process.
I know. I guess it is like a credit to good filmmaking though when you have to like go to your phone and Google like how did they do that? Because that happened to me a few times with the first. Yeah, like how did Jack Nicholson keep his penis soft? Please, I'd like to know. But like the opening sweeping shots of the mountains in that car, because they didn't have drones.
No.
I'm like, so I was like, there's a helicopter is the answer. But I, for a second, thought it would have been like a model or something. And just the way they do it, I'm like, that's crazy that they did this all like manually. And specifically the blood in the elevator scene.
Oh yeah,
as well.
Of course. It's like
I was like, that's crazy. How'd they do that?
Which
and I think just
how did they do that, Dara?
It was not a scale. I thought it was a model, and it wasn't. It was, they did it in actual size, and they did it three times, and it took about a year. Each time took many weeks to set up, and they thought they were going to do it once, and then Stanley Kubrick was like, run it again, and they're like, okay, well now we have to like clean everything and set up the whole like rig again. So they did it 3 times, and it took like basically the whole duration of filming to set this thing up and do it, then undo it and redo it again for Stanley Kubrick because he's fucking crazy.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, because I thought it was going to be a model, but then I was reading that if they had done it the way the water or fake blood or, you know, whatever they were using, the way it kind of crashed and cascaded would have given away that it was a miniature, you know, because it would have been...
Sorry, Jesus, I'm sick.
Kind of the scale of the waves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you pour a water bottle into a dollhouse, that's not what it looks like when it's raining, kind of situation. So I assumed that first shot and that the elevator were both miniatures, and they are not, which I think is, again, like a credit to objectively good filmmaking that I'm like, damn, Stanley Kubrick really did do that, huh? Bummer that he's such a dick, but... He makes really good movies.
Like, fuck, those shots were really hot. He sucks, but they were great. But do we want to get into our regularly scheduled programming?
Absolutely. So I think as far as food and drink, do we want to start off with that? Because I ate pizza bagels while I watched this, which was certainly not like on theme. It was not on brand. But did you eat or drink anything particularly interesting?
I have been drinking red wine the last couple of hours while I watched this. But if you wanted to get fun, funky, thematic, and fresh with it, I did look up, I mean, it's the whole red rum thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I said the same. I said red rum plus grenadine question mark was what I had written down.
I looked up like 1 or 2 things, and shout out Bacardi, don't sue me for putting your fucking recipe on my podcast. But Bacardi has a rum punch recipe. I don't know that rum punch is a thing to drink with this.
I think it maybe is because of also that elevator scene with the blood.
I mean,
I'm kind of like, I want a bowl of punch.
This movie is 2.5 hours long. I think you need a little bit of hard liquor. So it's Bacardi, Superior, like black rum as well, grenadine, orange juice, pineapple juice, cranberry juice. Easy money. It's fruity. It tastes good. You're good. You're fine. To eat though, I did not eat anything, and I would also recommend that you do not eat anything. I think you should smoke a cigarette and see how long that you can go without ashing it, similarly to Shelley Duvall in this movie.
Shelley Duvall ripping cigs inside, not homeschooling her kid. Yeah, with a full 6 inches of cigarette ash just hanging on for dear fucking life.
It's a personal bet that you've got going. You know what I mean? No, I think you just smoke a...
Yeah, this movie does not make me want to eat anything, I agree.
Yeah, no, nothing. And there's not really any food that's really mentioned other than, like, the fucking meat freezer. And I'm like, oh, yeah, so appetizing. Like, I don't know.
Or she makes him breakfast at one point, and she like makes him sunny side up eggs, which is like not
yeah.
iconic enough to. I'm not gonna eat eggs while I watch The Shining. Like maybe, but not on purpose.
I think you raw dog this with a drink, and a cigarette, either in the middle of it because you have to take a break or afterwards.
Yeah, right. And then what? Oh, so fuck, marry, kill. Do we think that the big three characters are Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and the Snow? Who's the third? Like the cook, like the chef. Okay, I'm gonna fuck the cook. I'm gonna marry Shelley Duvall. I'm gonna kill Jack Nicholson. Final answer.
I'm actually gonna fuck Jack Nicholson, kill Shelley Duvall, and marry the cook.
Why are you killing Shelley?
Listen, she just doesn't do anything for me in this movie. I know, it's hard for me to admit, but I want to be real and I want to be honest.
Really? Earlier when I was praising her performance, you didn't step in and say, not for me.
No.
You let me gush,
her
and you
performance
held
was
back?
great. But if we're talking character-wise, like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna opt to, like, fuck Jack Nicholson, like, a little pre-crazy. Maybe, like, a little close to, like, mid-crazy. But I'm definitely marrying the cook, because I feel like we would just have a good time. I feel like him and I could really connect, considering that he had, 2 gorgeous portraits of naked women, above his bed and above his TV stand. In Florida.
Right, in his Florida house, his summer home. I just want to marry Shelley Duvall because I think she deserves better. And I just want to... She would make me a sandwich and I would say, thank you so much.
She does. But we're talking... We're talking the characters in the movie, not Shelley Duvall herself. Listen, if I could...
Wendy. I think Wendy would make me a sandwich and I would say, thank you so much,
I don't know.
Wendy. I appreciate you and your efforts towards this family. I wouldn't axe murder her. If I was Jack Nicholson, I simply would not have axe murdered my lovely
I wouldn't
wife.
have axe murdered. If I have to kill her, if she's my kill and fuck, marry, kill, I'm just gonna give her, like, a cute little tranquilizer and then, like, you know, like put her to sleep like an animal. That's so bad. No, she's just a little too mousy for me in this movie. Like, if you you see your husband going crazy for months, and then you don't do dick, bestie.
And so then for the whole
I know
movie,
I know what I'm doing for the whole movie.
Oh, really? No, enlighten me.
Okay, I'm gonna fuck the bartender.
Oh, okay.
What's his name?
I couldn't tell you. The
All right,
bartender.
I'm gonna fuck the bartender.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the bartender, whatever. The ghost. I'm gonna fuck the ghost.
Fuck the ghost, yeah.
Yeah, no. Want to see what that ghost is about. I'm gonna fuck the ghost. I'm gonna kill Jack because it's the right thing to do. And then wait, no. I said fuck the ghost?
Yeah, you're gonna fuck the ghost.
Shit.
You can marry the ghost.
Shit. No. I could. Okay. Let me backtrack because I did have this really thought out. I'm still gonna marry the cook. I think we get along great. I'm gonna fuck Jack because it's the right thing to do. I could fuck the ghost, but I'm gonna fuck the hotel because it's so aesthetically pleasing.
I'm gonna fuck the carpet of the hotel. Right? I'm gonna fuck the hotel carpet.
Like, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. What's a girl to do? Aesthetically, I have no choice.
It's a fuckable hotel.
Here's the thing: is it's prettier than anyone else in this movie.
You're right for that one.
What about you?
Okay, so I am gonna fuck the woman in room 273, if that's the right number.
Oh, the hot one?
Well, even if she turns into a slimy ghost, I'm gonna say, what a fun prank you just pulled. And she's gonna say, yeah, I do that with all, and then she'll switch back. Because I have such a good sense of humor about it.
Really? You really think so? Because Darashi is literally rotting.
Yeah, she's gonna be hot. and then I'm going to start macking on her, and then she's going to turn rotting, and I'm going to have such a good attitude about it that she's going to be like, oh, you do deserve to fuck the hot version of me, and she'll morph back.
Oh, you're so right for this.
I'm just going to be so polite about it. I'll be like,
you thought this through.
Yeah, I'm going to be super polite. I'll be like, oh, that's so funny of you. Like, that's such a good joke. And she'll be like, yeah, isn't it? You have the right idea. Or even if she is still slimy, I think that, like, I'm really into, like, picking at scabs. So even if we don't fuck, even if she just lets me, like, prod around her weird flesh texture, I could be into that. From, like, a Dr. Pimple Popper kind of point of view. She'll, like, let me, like, remove some cysts or something.
I'm gonna have to leave this chat.
Sorry. Too real. I'm gonna kill the fucking lady doctor from the beginning who fully realizes that Danny has some sort of deep mental illness and says, don't worry about it, just have him lay in bed. And Shelley Duvall is like, he did get hit, and then she does not report child services.
Mm-hmm.
She was trash. The lady doctor from the beginning of this movie is the reason that everything transpired the way it did. She's garbage. And then I'm gonna marry still Shelley Duvall.
And then what would you follow this up with? I did immediately when you said something about meat pies earlier, think of Sweeney Todd after this. Because I did not come up with, like, a solid answer.
I feel like that is, like, ooky spooky and kind of like a very way that's different but complementary to this movie, though.
Yeah.
And it's also, like, good ensemble cast performance. I don't know. I could see that working as a good follow-up. I was thinking hotel theme. So you either do, like, Hotel Transylvania, which is a kid's movie, so maybe not. But also maybe, like, Grand Budapest Hotel. Or you know,
the fuck
right,
up.
you go...
Oh, that's such a... Oh! That is such a good turn.
Right, because you do, like, movies where the hotel itself is the catalyst for the whole story. Or, like, at least just a hotel movie is the thing.
Yeah.
And everyone has to come dressed up as a bellhop to the function.
I like that. Everyone has to bake something like Saoirse Ronan would.
Yeah. Or, like, everyone has to bring their luggage for some reason to the party.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
So this is our last episode for the year 2021.
What would you rate this movie, though?
Oh, I would give this movie an 8 out of 10. I love it. I think it's one of the best films ever made, objectively speaking. It is just that little twinge of, like, I don't like it when people abuse Shelley Duvall. Or anybody working on the set of a movie, for that matter. Just not my cup of tea. I think it's unethical. I think it's shitty. And I honestly, if you argue that he, like, had to do that to get those movies to be made, then I just think that means he's not a very good director. People can get great performances out of their actors without, like, you know, making them have hair loss.
Yeah.
8 out of 10, though, because it's still such a good movie.
Yeah, I'm also gonna sit tight with you at 8 out of 10. It was one of those things, like, I expected, like, I watched this movie and have enjoyed it before. It still exceeded my expectations the second sit down. So 8 out of 10 for sure. But like you said, Dara, this is our last podcast for
of the
2021.
year. Yes, which is pretty cool and exciting as we are entering a new year. And so we will be doing a new theme next month. Which I think we're going to go for something a little chaotic. We're going to do, like, Chaos January, because as the new year turns, we are all reminded that things do not get better with the formalities of passing time.
Exactly.
And
couldn't have said it better myself.
You know, the world isn't going to get fixed because it's a different year. And the world is still in shambles, and I'm still in shambles. So Chaos January just really feels right for us. Join us in the upcoming weeks when we do that. Also, I guess shouts out to our Silence of the Lambs episode. I literally tried to fool y'all into thinking we were about to talk about Silence of the Lambs of my own mistaken note-taking. But go back and listen to our other episodes from this year. I think we've had some good ones. And thank you all for listening. We are so appreciative. Make sure to hit us up on social media. All the links will be in the description below for our Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that good stuff. Send us DMs with movies you'd like us to talk about, or if you have an idea for a theme, or chocolate or vanilla, or literally anything. We love to hear from you all. And as always, I love you all. And good night.